are present, so we have a full deck. At this time, I'd like to have everybody stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item on the agenda is a spotlight on success. And I believe Andy will take that away, right?
Yeah, if you don't mind, thank you, Chair. I'd like Mr. Chair to come up to the podium, please, if you wouldn't mind. You tell me what to do all the time, so I'm going to tell you what to do. And I'm going to ask Jim Walker to come forward. And Jim is a former school board member. And this will all make sense in just a minute, I hope. The New Prague area schools are pleased to announce that Mr. Denny Havlicek has been selected as a Minnesota School Boards Association All-State Award winner. The All-State designation is MSBA's most prestigious honor. It is given to members who are active participants in MSBA-related activities and have a proven track record of positively impacting education at both the local and state levels. Denny has been a part of the New Prague Area Schools School Board since July 1st, 1996. During that time, he has had several different roles, including his current role of school board chair, vice chair, clerk, and in addition to all of those roles, he also has served as on the MRVSAC, or now Southwest Metro School Board, the New Prague Negotiations and Equity Team, Southwest Metro Negotiations Team, Special Education Advisory Council Committee, and on the Superintendent Recruitment Team for Southwest Metro. Mr. Havlicek has committed much of his life's work to public education. Prior to joining our school board, he worked for 34 years as a special education teacher and guidance counselor with the Bloomington Public Schools, retiring in 2003. In addition to his active engagement in New Prague Area Schools School Board, Denny is also a long-standing board member for Southwest Metro Intermediate School District, number 288. Denny, along with the 6 other recipients, I believe, were recognized from across the state, were formally recognized at MSBA's annual conference in January. And here tonight is Mr. Jim Walker, who himself is a former, I have learned, school board member in New Prague, and he has a plaque that he's going to present Denny. Let's give Denny a big round of applause for this.
Superintendent Volkmont has asked me to come and make this presentation this evening. Somebody who is more than deserving of this honor and all the fine things that Superintendent Volkmont taught you and that your contribution. Representative of the Minnesota School Boards Association, on behalf of them, I present this plaque and award to you to Dennis Havlicek, New Prague Area 2025 All-State School Board member.
I'm going to add one more thing. Mr. Walker tells me that he was never formally recognized by the school board in 2000. So as I told him, patience is a virtue. So I am going to walk over there right now and give Mr. Walker his all-state school board recognition from 2000. And as I understand, Jim kind of served as Denny's mentor when Denny first got on the board many, many years ago. So let's give them both one more big round of applause for their service.
Danny and I really work well together.
A hard guy to work with.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Volmuth. It's an honor to be given that plaque and all it represents. And I want to thank especially Jim Walker, because truly he was my mentor when I first joined the board some 29 years ago. And he was well deserving of getting the reward or the award at that time. And he was just a wonderful person to work with. So thank you, everybody, and thank you, Jim, for being here this evening to accept the award from Andy and also to give it to me. Thank you. Well, how do you follow up on that?
You follow that up with middle school students talking about BizTown,
Okay.
which is really fun
We'll
stuff.
get to that right on. As soon as I get my glasses. Okay, continuing with the Spotlight on Success, we have a presentation this evening of the middle school BizTown field trip. And we have Brad and also Mr. Bell here.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us. We could have brought all of our seventh grade students, but we were able to bring 4 of them tonight. So our presentation is actually on a form of BizTown. It's called Junior Achievement Finance Park, which is is kind of the middle school part of BizTown. So it was our very first year here going to this program, and it was in conjunction with the Education Foundation. Had a grant that we applied for, and we were able to get the curriculum and implement this in our 7th grade tech ed class. So get going here.
And Brad, that grant came from the New Prague
Education Foundation, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this this unit of Junior Achievement Finance Park was taught by Miss Anna Borwidge, who's our 7th grade technology teacher. The curriculum introduces our students to personal finance and career explorations.
So a big chunk of the 7th grade curriculum includes income, saving, investing, and risk management, debit and credit, and budget. So within that, kids got an opportunity to see a lot of real life skills, things that adults deal with all the time. Career exploration, the impact that it could have on your education and your career choices on your income. So each kid, and they'll talk a little bit about it, but each kid was given a different role in life essentially, and they played that role throughout the entire day, making different amounts of money, different careers, different family situations. They had to learn how to work through types of taxes and using their paycheck to be able to make ends meet. As a part of that too, the advantages and disadvantages of saving money and what that looks like, risk management. They looked at the stock market and investments, mortgages, all sorts of things that as adults I appreciate, because my 3 children, I can't dump all that knowledge into their heads in the 18 years that they're in our house, but it's awesome to be able to have that follow up through school as well. Benefits of saving for their future. They talked about future education. Some kids had a high school education through it. Some kids had 2-year educations from it. Some kids had 4 years. Some had masters. I mean, it was kind of all over the board, which was really cool to see the different levels and how each kid could be successful, knowing how to handle the financial part of it. Learning how to work through debit and credit too, just how to work through having a lot of kids had student loan debt if they went to college. Some kids didn't if they just went right into the workforce. So it was really differentiated for all the students to have a really cool experience.
Yeah, so the culminating activity was a simulated field experience that Mr. Bell and I were also able to attend with our students. So it was really cool for us as principals to be seeing our kids in action and also working with, we had parent volunteers that made this possible as well to run the stations at JA Finance Park. And so the students were able to explore various careers. And we even had some parents that worked at the different businesses that were sponsored at the BizTown. And the students, as Mr. Bell said, they assumed family and income scenarios by using banking expenses, investments, through their career exploration. So it was really a a great experience for our students to go through that and have those real-life connections at this age. I remember going to school, I didn't have something like this probably until high school.
And I will say big kudos to our parents that showed up and helped, because really Finance Park cannot function without the parents volunteering. And I know the parents were exhausted at the end of the day because they were the teachers and they kind of knew their spot and what they needed to accomplish. And then the kids would rotate through. It was like every 10 or 12 minutes you'd get a fresh group, and then you would go over that scenario all over again. So I know that the parents did a lot to help support it as well. So I'm very much appreciative of them as well. So I guess the stars of the show are the people who went through it. So we have 4 7th grade students here. I would like all of you to introduce yourself. You guys can just say your first name here. Why don't you guys step up here? Okay. And you guys talk nice and loud so that people can hear. You guys can come right up here. Come up nice and close. So if you guys just want to go down and just say your name and introduce yourself, just say your name and maybe say, before we get to the questions here, maybe say what was one thing that you enjoyed about Finance Park?
My name's Ava, and I enjoyed getting to learn how the budgeting and stuff works.
My name is Ingrid, and I liked learning about how to balance my money through all the different things I had to spend my money on.
My name's Jackson, and I enjoyed learning how to save your money and not spend it all.
My name is Max, and my favorite part of learning was
What about, maybe the next question would be the unit that was taught in class, maybe something that kind of stuck with you from the lessons that were taught during the school part by Mrs. Borwidge. And I do want to say with Mrs. Borwidge too, she did a really nice job of organizing this field trip and getting the parent volunteers yeah, it was a big task too. And also, I'd like to recognize Maren as well, because she helped to organize it as well and put this together. So it was really a team effort. So maybe talk about one thing that really stuck out with you during the class. Then we'll start at this end with Max.
one thing that really stuck out to me was how debit and credit works. Buying things on debit to have money to save, but also spend it.
I learned about saving, and if you put an amount of money in, you're trying to save up for something you want and enjoy.
I learned about credit score and how if you have a higher credit score or what your credit score is at depends, and that will help you buy certain things.
We did a budget sheet, so it showed we would draw a card every day, and it would be you bought something or you got money, and if you lost some money, then you could go into debt, or if you got money, then you could get more money, and then the goal would be to who had the most savings at the end. So I really learned a lot from that.
Do you have any questions? As you can see, or as you heard, these 4 had just a snippet of it. It was a great experience of what they learned, not only in the class but also at the field trip activity. So, any questions?
I'd just like to make a comment. Real life scenarios are a great way of learning about life experiences in the future. And this sounds like it really was a great real life experience. That's super. Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a question for Brett. Do all the kids take the class?
Yeah, so
And do all the kids then go?
Yeah, well, most of them were able to go. Some obviously were absent that day, or if they were sick, they were unable to go.
But it was for the whole class?
Yeah, the 7th
Okay,
grade.
great.
Yeah.
Wow. Good job, kids.
Learning how to be an adult before you want to, right?
I was going to say a lot of adults could take refresher classes on the subject.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming, Mr. Bell and
Very cool.
Mr. Greger. I appreciate you doing that, and
Great
congratulations for such a nice job on that program. Thank you.
Good job, kids.
All right, we'll go on to item number 6, and that is the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. Next, we have the consent agenda. And does anybody have any comments on the consent agenda?
Let's see, I know I had one about the bus driver. It
Mhm.
looks like we had that program work for getting a new bus driver in, the bonus program. Did that fix our net problem of, or not fix it, but help towards the shortage, or was that a replacement?
I don't have that information. I believe it was, I can get that information for it and send it to you. I think it's always great to have extra bus drivers, and I think they're even looking for substitutes, or they were. So I don't know if it's solved it, and I don't know if it's ever solved, because
Yeah.
they're always, they're at times looking for other drivers, but I can get that information for you.
I just thought it was cool to see that
And
in action.
it's just really started too, so, we, just maybe have some people that are looking at it seriously and might take advantage of the incentives that we have for them, so.
Yeah, I don't have all the details in front of me, but I'm happy to gather that and share
I
it
did
with
hear a
you.
commercial for the bus driver need on the local radio station, so we're hitting it from all aspects that we can, so. But we're not unusual. We're like most districts, school bus drivers and support staff is difficult to come by these days. Any other comments? And then I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Item passes. Next, we'll go to the superintendent's report.
Do you want to do the board committee reports, or do you want to wait?
I'm sorry.
The board committee reports?
Oh, I'm sorry. I went down too far. We do have a special presentation by the Native Americans today, and we will be postponing that one, but I had it in my head that we're going to postpone this one too. Okay, so we'll go through the board committee reports, and I'm the first one to report, and that is on the Southwest Metro meeting that I had last Tuesday. It was a good meeting. Things are going along very well at Southwest Metro. We're serving the kids in many capacities, and a lot of kids are being successful because of the programs that we have there. Something that we cover that's really unique is that at Southwest Metro, we've really invested in trying to get teachers from other countries. And right now we have a good number of teachers that are coming on board from the Philippines, and they will be getting acclimated and take over classes in the special needs area. So that is a really neat thing that Southwest Metro is looking at to deal with the shortages of teachers. And then one other thing too, this past Saturday I was involved with a planning for the upcoming different type of program that we're going to be having. I always forget the term for it. Can you help me out? Did you talk about today at the meeting?
I'd love to help you out, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure exactly.
Okay. If I think I'll let you know in a little while. But we're planning a new type of program coming along, and we're going to be getting it on the ground. And we spent a whole day on Saturday just getting it off the ground and planning on it. Next on the committee reports is CPAC. And we will be having our first meeting. I believe it's our first meeting, or is there a second? Anyway, we'll be having a meeting this coming Thursday virtually, so I'll be attending that. Next, we will go on to community education.
No meeting.
No meeting, okay. Early childhood community
No
coalition.
meeting coming up.
For that one? Is there one coming up?
There is.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Then how about the Joint Powers Committee?
No meeting.
No meeting. Next, we go down to the equity, and I can speak for that one. Right now, we're still looking at forming that committee. There are, several types of things that we're looking at with Andy and Kim to get that going, but right now we still haven't got that completed, so it's another work in progress. Then we have the District Advisory Committee.
So at District Advisory, we worked on the electronic device policy that we reviewed in our last working session, And then we reviewed the new EMS textbook that we're going to be looking at later on in this meeting. And then we did a little bit of work on the profile of a graduate and continue to round out that document.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Next, we have the New Prague Area Education Foundation.
There may be a meeting tonight. Is that correct? Yep, meeting tonight. And coming up on March 20th, we have our Arts and Activities Spring Showcase. Very exciting.
Okay.
At the New Prague Park Ballroom.
Okay,
And
thank you.
all public will be invited to that.
Okay, now we'll go on to the superintendent's report. Sorry about that, Andy.
No, no problem. Again, I wanted to recognize Denny again, and thank you to Jim Walker and his wife Margaret for being here tonight. The winter sports season, believe it or not, is wrapping up, and we've had several significant achievements just in the last couple of days. Congratulations to our girls gymnastics team for their runner-up finish on Friday evening in the Minnesota State High School League AA Championships. On Saturday, Ava Brugger was crowned the 2025 Class A All-Around Champion, and her teammate Avery Proshek was the runner-up in the All-Around Championship. So it was a really great season, and they've had a great couple of runs, and Coach Daryl Christensen, and I want to congratulate him as well as those student athletes and their families for the terrific season, as well as all of our other student athletes, coaches, and families who are participating in the winter sports season. I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce, the New Prague Chamber of Commerce, for last week we had a State of the City and the State of the School District presentation hosted by the Chamber. We'll be doing the same tomorrow in Lonsdale. But thank you to the New Prague Chamber for putting that on last week. And then I want to thank and kind of give a little bit of an update on our facility task force. We have nearly 35 stakeholders who represent our school system, families, and members of the greater community. I want to thank them for their efforts to date. So far, they have been inundated with data, whether it be financial data, a review of our long-term facility maintenance plan and needs, and the next steps will be involving prioritizing our long-term facility needs with emphasis on needs, not necessarily wants, when we think about long-term facility maintenance. And then they'll be making a recommendation for the school board to consider for going forward. And I would hope that presentation will come to you in March, and if it's not ready in March, it'll be in April. And I should also recognize Dan, Carrie, and Karen, who are representing the school board on that committee as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just remembered the word that I couldn't think of, and it's strategic plan.
Oh.
We're developing a new strategic plan for District 288, Southwest Metro, and we spent a whole day looking over the plans, going over the scenarios that will fit our district as best as we can. And then the board is going to get together at our next meeting in March. And at that meeting, we'll continue the work and get it close to being finalized. So we are coming up with a new strategic plan for District 288. Got that one taken care of. Okay, next we have reports and discussion items. Planning for success follow-up.
I'm going to move for a second, so give me a second, please. I should note that this handout or this presentation has been in your packet. I changed it just a little bit. I recaptured a slide towards the end to kind of reinforce some of our talking points, but other than that, so there is a slight update to what is in your board packet. The goal tonight, and this is a rather lengthy presentation, and I'm going to go through some of it fairly quickly. I think I'll hold off on questions until the end because there's a lot of detail that I acknowledge in this presentation, and it really probably has three different goals. One is as a follow-up to last spring's Planning for Success process, We'll recap what we did in the spring, some of the work that we did, and I'll remind you that at the end of that process, a little over a year ago, we said we still need to have conversations about structural budget adjustments. We will do that. It also then recaps and brings back that referendum discussion that we had as long ago as last winter after our last failed referendum. And if you think about what I just talked about with the facilities planning, it probably starts a discussion about what you would like to do, if anything, with regards to the recommendation that's going to be brought forward from the committee regarding the long-term facility needs that they are uncovering. And so that is there, and I want to reiterate and emphasize that these are, when we get to this point, these are potential budget reductions. We made a decision, you made a decision a couple of months ago that we did not need to make structural budget reductions for the 25-26 school year. These conversations are important as we continue to be good steward of taxpayer investment into our schools. I recognize as I work with the professional staff that these kind of conversations have a lot of weight, and there's a lot of emotion behind them because of the challenges that happen when you make budget reductions. And that is real, and that is there, but it's important to have these proactive discussions in order to determine, for you all to determine our best long-term steps based on our current reality. And there are financial implications and there are programming implications. Budget reductions are difficult, and they can have a negative impact on morale and culture. Importance of continuing to promote the New Prague Way. It's more important than ever for us to continue to lead through the New Prague Way, and I have a couple slides to remind us all of that. And I have been very pleased and very proud of the work that our staff has done to provide high levels of programming for our students, and that will continue despite many of the challenges that we have had to collectively face. So again, a reminder of the New Prague Way for all of us to do what's right, to commit to excellence, and I think this is an example of having a really difficult conversation. That's what we need to do in order to maintain that proud tradition and build on that proud tradition and have a promising future. At the same time, showing people that we care. And again, I acknowledge the weight that these conversations have and how they stir up a lot of emotions for our professional staff who have been affected in some way, shape, or form. So a little bit of background. Again, going back to those referendum discussions, probably back in the spring, and there's some, these are original slides from several different presentations that are brought together. The spring 24 is an addition, so I don't know when exactly it was, but last year in the spring, we talked about referendum options, and I told you had 6 different options that we presented as a starting point. You can see them there. Back in the fall, we came back in with this very same presentation or a version of that, and our fall-winter discussion was do nothing, or 6 was a operating and or capital projects in the fall of 25. 2, 3, 4, and 5 were not possible just because of when they were scheduled to go, and we decided to not do anything at that point. That is a discussion that is going to need to continue. That's what the board chair has asked of me, previous and current, is to continue to have that discussion with you, and so we will continue to do that in the next several of months. With regards to planning for success, as I was preparing for this last week and over the weekend, though this wasn't a perfect process, I'm really proud of how thorough this process was, and I think we uncovered a lot about our system in terms of where we could make reductions, but also the charge was to not only think about how we reduce, but also how can we enhance. So we looked for areas where our system could be enhanced. So we're having discussions about ADSIS funding. We created different things to enhance our system, not just thinking about how we would necessarily take things away. It was grounded in our mission and vision, and really in our strategic directions. And so in essence, it was an audit of our system, and it was a lot of work. And if we were to need to go back to make other reductions, we have done that work. There maybe isn't all the detail there, but tonight I'm going to point you in the directions if we were to need to make other reductions where my recommendations or our recommendations would be coming from. A little bit of a reminder of what that process looked like. It happened from mid-January to really the end of February or middle of March. And we had those, I think it's 10 different areas where we really looked at, we had leaders looking at our system from early learning programming to the administration and district office and everything in between. Again, grounded in our strategic directions. And this is our current reality. I shared this with you last year, and these factors haven't changed. I was with superintendents today from across the region, and we were talking about budget reductions happening in neighboring school districts. Many of them are having these same factors, whether it be declining enrollment, increase in expenses, statewide factors that you can see, insufficient funding or unfunded or partially funded mandates, and just the fact that it costs more to educate kids in the 21st century. It's not, as I talked to my superintendent colleagues, I was thankful I wasn't in their shoes because we were there last year. I was thankful you weren't in their shoes. But this is not unique to New Prague. These are situations and these factors are impacting districts across the state. As a result of the spring 2023 and the spring 2024 reductions, it was about 6.6 million, which is about 14% of our overall operating budget has been reduced during those times. Again, thankful that we don't need to make structural budget reductions this year. But again, as we sat here on a cold March 24th, I believe it was, when we talked about the last stages of planning for success, you saw this slide, and then you saw this slide, where we would, if we needed to do more, we would have to have additional discussions about transportation and operations, elementary class sizes, and secondary programming. And at that time, I told you if it was $500,000 or more, I would bring it to you for discussion. We've since changed that to $250,000. Change in leadership from Sandy to Brian. Want to make sure that we recap that, and Brian has done a terrific job, and Tony have done a terrific job in their new roles. But we gave financial projections back in December. Part of that was because of Sandy's planned move out. We wanted to make sure that we had captured all of the accurate information. So these next few slides recap those financial projections. And thankfully, like I said, we didn't have to make budget reductions this year. And here are some of the reasons why. We were able to grow our fund balance. We had higher than expected enrollment, which is over $600,000. We did some things to become a less expensive organization through the early retirement incentive that we undertook in partnership with New Prague Education Minnesota, and some of those other factors. So we still have a problem, as Sandy would say, and I can hear her saying that to me now. We still have a problem in terms of a structural problem with regards to revenue and expenditures going forward. We gave you two options, I believe. This was the option that you landed on in the winter of '24, to not make any structural budget reductions, but to continue to look for cost containments. And we will continue to look for cost containments in the organization, and I'll give an example as to where cost containments may take place. I asked Mr. Fell to run the number of elementary students we have in our 3 buildings, and if I remember correctly, there's about 1,589 elementary students this year. If we go forward, we're planning for just over 1,500 elementary students next year. So we would look at that as an area where we can make some cost containments in terms of the number of teachers that we may need at the elementary school level, just because of the decreasing enrollment, right? There's still budget reductions, they still have an impact, but those are things that we are going to continue to do as we continue to our tradition of being good stewards of taxpayer investment. So this was option 1. This is what this was the decision that the board gave going forward. And again, here gets into that detail in the difference between structural and cost containment measures, which we will continue to look for. Questions so far? All right, one more Sandy presentation. I think it's important to recognize, and we did this back in November, and this was about our fund balance. there is some good news. Again, no budget reductions needed, no structural budget reductions needed for the 25-26 school year, and we have been able to grow our fund balance, our unassigned fund balance, to right around 13%. You can see, I think our board policy is right around 8%, but we've been able to grow that fund balance because of cutting costs, because of some of the reductions that we made. Things like not a lot of snow, we don't have as much snow removal, help a school district a lot. Our enrollment this year is more than it was projected, and so we have that additional cushion, though I think that fund balance is really important and very critical, especially in times like this. And you can see a long-term visual here of what the fund balance, the unassigned and the assigned fund balances looks like, and I'd really encourage you to look at the red. So you can see the trend data back from 1920 until this current school year. So the next several slides are if we needed to make additional budget reductions. These are some of the reductions that we would propose. It's not at ground level. It's not meant to be a ground level yet because we're not making any budget reductions this year structurally. But you've asked for me to follow up, and you need this information as you continue to think about what to do, whether there's a referendum or there's not a referendum. And so this is to give you our best estimate as to what these reductions could look like, what the impact would be, and what the overall savings would be. Again, I recognize that even by showing this, it has some really negative emotions amongst our staff. But I do think that these proactive conversations are important for you as you weigh your options and make informed decisions. So one area that we could look at is transportation. This just gives you a recap of what we have done in transportation. We did not make any changes in board policy to our walking distances last year. What we did is we adhered to what was in the school board policy of elementary students. If you were within 0.5 miles, you walked, and secondary, if you were within 1 mile, you walked. I would like to say the New Prague area schools was going above and beyond in transporting everyone prior to last year. And so when we did our planning for success, we realized we couldn't do that anymore. So there were no changes to the board policy. There were changes to our practice, and it had an impact of around 200 students. And you can see where they were in their respective schools. Now keep in mind these student counts are based on this year's numbers, and they would fluctuate from year to year, but this gives you, I think, a pretty good perspective of what the impact was this year. Going forward, it gets a little fuzzy because you're taking our current enrollment and putting it into future tense. If we needed to make additional, and nobody wants to make budget reductions, so if we needed to make additional reductions, you have 2 clicks, and you can see it's transportation option 1. The walking distance for elementary would be 1.0, and for secondary it would be 1.5. You can see the impact at each site. You can see the total number of secondary students in this case that would be impacted, and the savings would be about $140,000. We budget about $70,000 per route, and so you can see that there would be $140,000 savings by increasing that walking distance another half a mile. If you went to the state max of 1.5 for elementary and 2 for secondary, you can see the impact becomes greater, and you could save another $70,000. So in essence, we're taking 3 of our routes and drivers offline. Okay? A couple of notes and a couple things to consider. Any increase in walking distance will have a negative impact on all riders. Buses will be more full. There will be longer routes going to and from. It'll be more of a strain on our drivers for sure. We would need to look at bell times potentially in order to accommodate increased load and just getting our buses to schools in a timely manner. There would be an impact for St. Wentz starting at 1.5 miles, and you can see the total potential impact would be just over $200,000. Okay? I will pause after each of these. Mr. Gall, did you have a question?
Does the price for running a route include the capitalization on the buses? Is that factored in, or is that a separate line item on these for the reduced capital footprint?
I say more about your question, please.
We've been deferring purchases of buses for quite some time.
Yep.
So I would assume that if we're cutting routes, that would reduce the number of total buses we're owning, maintaining, and such. And is that included in this number, or would changes in the amount of capital required to maintain the bus fleet be included in this number?
I can get more information on that. My initial reaction is we've delayed, and maybe I'm not answering your question, so forgive me if I'm not, but we've delayed the number of buses that we've purchased that we're a little bit behind. I think we need to purchase some buses in order, and again, we're a couple years out from doing any of these things, so I don't believe there would be additional savings. Maybe long term. I don't know if I'm understanding, so maybe I'm not.
Yeah, I assume the short-term buses would be purchased, but the question is long-term. Is the $140,000 savings reflecting reduced future capital expenditures?
I don't believe so. I think it's just these initial routes that we have budgeted each year. So it doesn't have the long-term savings calculated into that.
Thank you.
Any others?
Well, I'd like to make a comment. With fewer miles put on the buses, it would delay probably the need for new buses because you're not using them as fully as you were before.
If I may, I might say this might put more miles
Yeah.
on our buses
Yes.
because they're
Yes.
having more stops, they're traveling in greater distance. So I think it could be the opposite that takes
Yeah.
place.
But we'd be using fewer buses.
We would be using fewer buses, but they're still going to have
miles.
to
More miles
travel.
on the
On the
buses
ones that
are
we
being
use.
used. Yeah.
And if I'm channeling my inner Craig Most, he would be reminding me, and I'll remind you, that once you take these away, you don't bring them back, right? These are things that are there that you could at some point, but once you make any of these reductions, it's very hard to bring them back, right? We've had 2 maintenance requests that haven't passed. We haven't asked for more where we bring programs or buses or people back. These are all have been traditionally about maintaining what we have. And so just know that if it goes away, we work under the assumption as we do these things, and again, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but it's very hard to bring them back unless there's a significant change in revenue.
What comes to mind for me naturally is safety. So it would be nice to see this tabled and be a last option for me.
Tonight is really more about information
Right.
than acting on any of these, because again, going back, and thank you for bringing that up, you have given us the direction to not make structural budget reductions. And I can't say it enough because I want to make sure that people who are listening to this hear that. This is information for you to consider and for the community to be aware of if additional budget reductions were needed to be made at some point, right? So we're not prioritizing tonight. That's not what I'm asking you to do. This is really just information to you all about finishing that planning for success process. And I would agree with you.
Thank you.
Next is class sizes, and this will be elementary class sizes. I've done my best to try to take a lot of information here and working with the administrative staff to have this make sense for you. And I hear my elementary teaching friends when I get to averages reminding me that there are spots where those averages aren't true, and they're higher and they're lower. The ones who are reminding me are the ones where their class sizes are higher. But that's very true, as these are averages at both the elementary and the secondary level once we get there. You can see on the left, right in the middle, is what our class sizes were prior to 24-25. Notes below say that this was our first class size increase in some time. I think it's important to acknowledge and maybe write this number down. We staff at our teachers' average salary and benefits at around $80,000. So when we look at what a teacher cost is to us, it's $80,000. That number grows as they have been, as their tenure grows. But especially our newest staff members, that FTE, average FTE, approximate FTE is $80,000. So those reductions that we made, or those class size increases that we made, equated to about 5 FTE, and we were able to reduce $400,000 approximately. Because of cohort sizes and what you'll see on an upcoming slide, it did have impact in primary, but ultimately it had a larger impact in our more intermediate, our 3, 4, 5 grade levels, as you will see, and there are exceptions to the rule. I know that to be true. So you have an option, and this is not, we are not doing this, but if you were to raise class size, if we were to raise class sizes, I gave you a potential of what it would look like and how much money you could save. So on the far right is just a hypothetical. If you went from what is in the middle to the right, and it's not a straight point or 2 student increase, you can see by increasing to 2 grade levels there wasn't a significant difference. We would be able to save approximately an additional 4.5 FTE, or around $360,000, and your class sizes would be 24, 25, 28 at 3rd grade, 30 at 4th grade, and over 30, 32 at 5th grade. To be very transparent with you, those numbers can continue to grow based on if we would to need to find additional reductions. Right? That's a really slippery slope. When pushed last year, people said, well, what's coming next? We didn't really want to float a number because it's hard to tell, because enrollment fluctuates, revenue to our expenditures. We talked about the potential of $2 million, and thankfully we didn't need to make any reductions this year. $600,000 for enrollment increase, $600,000 revenue to expenditures. We saved money by doing the early teacher incentive, so we were able to walk that back. But you could find more reductions by increasing class sizes even more than they're on the screen. This is a starting point, and you can see what the approximate savings would be. Questions? Okay. This is a visual that I think I've shared with you before, and this just shows that the real impact happens more so in our intermediate years rather than our primary years. So all the way on the left is fiscal year 22. The purple is fiscal year 25, where we're currently at. Again, there are exceptions to the rule in some of our schools based on cohort size, based on how they were able to divide out sections, but you can see where the impact had the largest impact was in our intermediate classrooms in terms of elementary class sizes. All right, the next 2 is a middle school option. Currently we have the 7-period day at the middle school, and thank you for Mr. Bell and Mr. Greger for being here, because they navigated their school community with strong teacher leaders through a pretty difficult time last year. Last year, when we took away the middle school model, we reduced 9 FTE in our middle school, okay? The pre-planning for success, so class sizes before last year, was right around 27.5, and that's average, so there's going to be some that are smaller, and there's going to be some that are higher. I would say 3 to 5, one way or the other, and so their current class size sits at around 30, and I can tell you there'll be a middle school teacher who will tell me tomorrow that her class sizes are at 35. But there's a range. This is an average when it goes, some are smaller, some are larger. There's 2 options at the middle school, and how we've looked at this is option 1 would be to move from a 7-period day to a 6-period day. The class size would stay the same. And the impact when you do that is really on the allied or the elective courses. So you take away a lot of the choice that our middle school students need. We believe that they need, that they benefit from. You really have an impact on those additional options for middle school students. The reduction would be around 6 FTE if you did that. If you needed to find more, if we needed to find more reductions, it could be a 6-period day and a class size increase. And so the average class size would move to 34. That means you would have some class sizes that, when you look at that average, that would be closer to 40 than they would be to 30. And there your impact is really on your core classrooms. Your math, your language arts, your science, your social studies. You have less teachers, you have more students in classrooms, and you have larger class sizes, and you could probably find 2 more FTE in addition to the 6 above. So that could be, we could, if we needed to, have another 8 FTE approximately reduction in the middle school. You can see the notes below in terms of where those totals would be. So in essence, we would go from from the middle school model to a 7-period day. We're not making any reductions next school year, but there is an option for a 6-period day. And if that wasn't enough, we needed to do more in order to get to whatever that figure would be. It would be a 6-period day and a class size increase. I should say that I did this with the help of the principals, with our administrative team, trying to understand what these impacts would be and giving you a clear picture as best possible. Okay. Last one, high school options currently benefit from a 7-period day. Prior to the Planning for Success process, our class sizes were around 28. After Planning for Success, we moved those to 32. Again, a range of about 3 to 5 kids one way or the other, 3 to 5 students. The reduction was 3.8 FTE plus 1 clerical position at the high school. And the high school teachers would remind me that their numbers aren't going down. In fact, the wave of smaller cohorts are at our elementary years. They have not hit the high school. And so the high school enrollment is really pretty steady, but we just don't have money in the system to support potentially. Last year we didn't have money to support a 7-period or the middle school model anymore, right? So it's not a question of what is the best, it's what are we able to support based on our current reality. If we needed to make reductions, it would be very similar to the middle school. Our first option at the high school would be to move to a 6-period day. And there are a lot of impact on this. I want to say there's been a lot of discussions, and I'm trying to give you a very high-level understanding of what this could look like. But I will tell you, we have spent months, weeks, hours trying to understand this for you, knowing that having this discussion takes all the air out of the room, right? And that this is not something that anybody wants to do. If we were to go to the 6-period day, again, class size doesn't change. You would have reduced opportunities for students, and they would be in our elective classes. And if Mr. Thorstead was sitting next to me, he would remind me and remind you of, as would the teachers at the high school, about the robust programming that we're able to provide at the high school and all the choices that we are able to provide. And so we are net gainers in terms of open enrollment. We've been able to slow down students who are taking classes outside of New Prague in online programs, and they're staying in our school district, which has a benefit to the high school and all of our schools. So if that wasn't enough, option 2 would be the 6-period day and a class size increase. You can see your average class size is 35, and again, that would push 40 if we needed to make that reduction. It's about 3 to 4 additional FTE, and this is where you have an impact on your core classrooms. So your core classroom, there are less core classroom teachers, and the class sizes then subsequently go up. Total reduction for all of those would be $560,000, and you could see the breakdown as to what they would look like. Okay? Again, I added, this is the change to the presentation. It wasn't a lot, but I think it's a good reminder for me and for others that we have been and we will continue to be good stewards of taxpayer investment. This is a proactive discussion that we need to have, that people need to hear, that you need to have this information as you decide and you weigh what are the best long-term steps for our school districts. As I say, adding is a lot more fun than subtracting. Budget reductions are difficult. Discussing budget reductions are difficult. And I am keenly aware of the weight that this conversation has on our professional staff as they live through 2 rounds of budget reductions over the last 2 years, and hoping that there isn't more to come. But this brings back some of those emotions for them. And so it's important to continue to reinvest and double down on the new Prague way, all of us, myself included. And I am confident we have and will continue to have high levels of programming, and that's because we have staff who continue to go above and beyond. They do great things in our classrooms. They do amazing things in our classrooms, despite the fact that they've had additional challenges that they've faced because of more students or less supports or whatever it may be. They continue to show up, and I'm very proud and thankful for the work that they do. So last is another reminder, no structural budget reductions for 25-26. This is to give you information to weigh as we go forward into the spring, into the summer, for other conversations that need to be had. So with that, any questions that you have?
I would just like to make a comment again, Andy. These aren't fun things to be discussing and to be looking at, but you have to do it because the reality is here. And these are scenarios that could happen if things continue the way they are.
Yeah, if on behalf of the administrative team, if we decide that and we all decide there needs to be additional budget reductions, in some way, shape, or form, those 4 areas that I just talked about, if there need to be structural budget reductions, 250 or more, like we've talked about, we're going to have to look at how they're going to be impacted. I mean, I am very, very proud of the work that the administrative team did in that audit last year through Planning for Success. The work is done. There needs to be fine-tuning based on what a number might be. But those are the structural areas that if you say to us, additional reductions are necessary, those are the ones that I'm going to come to you, and then we would have a discussion about priorities and how you would want to, what you would prioritize. It's not the time for that, but this is where I would be pointing, unfortunately.
Comments or questions?
I would just say I appreciate the detail of it, to really be able to point to something that says this is the impact as we go forward with the community and different discussions with people. I really do appreciate the time that went into it.
Thank you.
Thank you. You did a good job on this, Andy.
Well, I had a lot of people helping, so I am here. And again, I want to be, because of our principals who put a lot of work into this, I had an opportunity to visit all of our site-based leadership teams and talk about this, especially the middle school and the high school. Though this will present some challenges. This will create some emotions in people, and I want to remind people that we're not in the budget reduction mode right now, but this is to inform the board and the community about for decisions that have to be made coming forward.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Andy. Thank you.
Next, we will be looking at finalizing the school board committees. And this is an interesting thing because I was at the state school board convention, and I went to a session on reorganizing committees, and it was led by the Duluth School District, and it was a full room with people from other school districts coming to hear how that particular school district reorganize their committees. So we're doing something that a lot of people are taking a second look at. Committees are where a lot of the grunt work gets taken care of. A lot of the work gets done in committees. And we want them to be meaningful, and we want them to be successful. And that's why we're doing it. So take it away, Andy.
Yeah, and I would say to the themes of, again, communication and engagement, how do we continue to find ways to communicate with our stakeholders, and I think we've made some inroads in that, and then how do we as a district, and the board included, continue to engage our community in the work that we're doing. So there's not a great deal more. I just want to, for final approval, before we do some work over the next couple weeks to get into the committees. Danny has asked that you put your stamp on this one more time, and then I think Denny will be in contact with you about committee assignments, and we plan is to finalize those at the March study session. Is that still your goal?
At
Okay.
the work session.
So you've seen much of this. Again, grounded in our vision and mission and our strategic plan, our core values. These were the past committee assignments, and they're on your agenda tonight. And we looked at how we divide them in terms of committees, advisory councils, and then representatives of different things. And so the 3 board committees would be the executive, the policy, and then new is the legislative committee. The advisory council, we did some sharing, and we tried to combine some things. Special education parent advisory, along with Southwest Metro, community education, early childhood community coalition, a new policy, finance and facilities, and involving joint powers in that, equity, and then the district advisory committee. And then representation to orgs and governing bodies. We wanted to maintain, that was the wish of the board, our relationship with the Education Foundation, the Minnesota State High School League. I put an asterisk by Southwest Metro because if you sign up to be a part of Southwest Metro, then it would seem logical that you were a part of the Special Ed Parent Advisory Council. Double asterisk in terms of the schools advocating for fair funding, because if you were going to sign up for the legislative committee, a function of that would be, and a really good function would be when able participating in schools advocating for fair funding. And then we have meet and confer with New Prague Education Minnesota. So this would be the new committee structure. You can see I did my best to try to keep it as consistent as possible. If you can see from where you're at in red are the changes, where things have been combined or where we have added committees. I think it's manageable. I was thinking of the workload of you all as well, and how you divide and conquer your time and talents into these different committees. And so then next steps would be our, especially with the committees and the advisory council, those who lead them are really firming up their purpose statements and their roles and responsibilities for school board members and others. We just need to then clarify our program pattern and frequency. And then we also want to do a better job of what it looks like for meeting notes or school board reports, and just have clarity around all of that. And so that working visual that I shared with you last week or 2 weeks ago, I will share that with you in advance of our next meeting, and so you have that information to consider. It's still a working draft. We still have a couple things that we need to finish up on that. So I would ask Mr. Chair for you to for questions around those board committee assignments or next steps.
Yes, and let me know what committees that you're interested in being on, and I'll try to honor the request as much as I can. We've had a kind of a standing tradition of having 2 board representatives on committees, but the Duluth report said that they go as high as 3. So if there's a real desire for a 3rd person to be on a committee that they like, I would look at that seriously. Okay? Thank you.
Anything else you need from me?
Great. I like the juggling of things and putting things back together if they make more sense. Thank you.
Not
Okay.
very comfortable sitting at this table. I just want people to know that. So I'm hoping to get up and go back and sit back over there.
You've been there before.
I have, and I'm wanting to get away
Right
from
around
it
this
as much
time,
as I
huh?
possibly can. So I don't have my agenda in front of me. I don't know what is next.
It could be called the hot seat.
In a little bit, it might be.
Good job.
Okay, next we have item 10.3, and that is the first reading of policies.
That's me. Andy, you get to go sit down. Okay, let's see. I think we have 5. Okay. Policy 101, legal status of the school district. The purpose is, a primary principle of this nation is that the public welfare demands an educated and informed citizenry. The power to provide for public education is a state function invested in the state legislature and delegated to local school districts. The purpose of this policy is to clarify the legal status of the school district. Questions or comments? Kim?
No.
Danny?
No.
Carrie? No. Jean?
No.
Dan?
Nope.
Policy 103, complaints, students, employees, parents, and other persons. The school district takes seriously all concerns or complaints by students, employees, parents, and other persons. If a specific complaint procedure is provided within any other policy of the school district, the specific procedure shall be followed in reference to such a complaint. If a specific complaint procedure is not provided, the purpose of this policy is to provide a procedure that may be used. Questions, comments, Dan?
Nope.
Jean?
No.
Carrie? No. Danny?
No.
Kim?
No.
2 for 2. Policy 519, interviews of students by outside agencies. There are occasions in which persons other than school district officials and employees find it necessary to speak with a student during the school day. Student safety and disruption of the educational program is of concern to the school district. The purpose of this policy is to establish the procedures for access to students by authorized individuals during the school day. Questions, comments, Kim?
No.
Danny?
No.
Carrie?
I would say that I'd like to better understand how that policy is implemented in the district. It's not necessarily a question with the policy, but maybe during the working session, just understand when it's brought to the principal, who's making that decision past the principal, because I know that this one is of concern to parents.
Okay.
So can I summarize that question? And we'll discuss it at the work session.
Yeah.
But your question is really just about implementation of the policy, what it looks like on the day-to-day?
Yeah.
Okay.
How the administrator handles that policy.
Fair.
Jean?
No.
Dan?
Yeah, I've got 2. And so the first one is with Section E of Section 3. It seems like that statement probably belongs in the general policy rather than only in regards to interviews conducted under the Maltreatment of Minors Act, referring to student removal. And so basically it says that a student shall not be taken from the property without consent of the principal and without proper warrant. And I'm assuming that would apply generally and not only on the maltreatment of minors.
I don't have it in front of me, but I'm writing notes down so that we can research it and then bring it back. So it was Section 3.
E. Mm-hmm.
It's a one-liner. I mean, it's a one sentence.
It's the general protocol that you use to get a student out of school for whatever reason. Like I took my grandchild for orthodontics, so he had to get permission from his parent to.
What would your question?
So in this one, it reads, students shall not be taken from the school district property without the consent of the principal and without proper warrant. So I believe it's only talking about if like a law enforcement or something like that came to remove a student.
Oh, this isn't for the day-to-day.
Yeah, that's
thing?
not for the day-to-day.
Oh.
And so it's my belief that we probably want that standard, regardless the reason of removal. And as the policy is structured, it only falls under interviews conducted under the Maltreatment of Minors Act.
Oh.
And I think that's probably a general concern. We don't want people removal. And then the second piece would be whether or not that statement is too broad, in the sense of I think if it's a non-disruptive environment, the removal of a student without a proper warrant would make sense. But in a case of probable cause, whether it's a drug crime, a crime of violence, or some of those other items, I would think that we would still want the police to be able to use probable cause to remove somebody who's engaging in violence or something like that without the warrant. And so that would be my my 2 concerns with the way this policy is written.
Okay.
If I may, I think try to answer both Carrie's question about what does it look like may also bring some light into what that looks like based on the different scenarios that we may face. So I think I have enough to be able to give more information, because I think there's a lot of different layers to what it could look like. But we'll do some research and bring it back to the work session.
Okay.
Fair?
Policy 703, annual audit. Purpose of this policy is to provide for an annual audit of books and records of the school district in order to comply with law, to provide a permanent record of the financial position of the school district, and to provide guidance to the school district to correct any errors and discrepancies in its practices. Questions or comments, Dan?
Nope.
Jean?
No.
Carrie?
Just a question around, do we use the same auditor every year? Do we bid it out? How is that process played out?
Okay, we'll find out for you. Is that all?
Yep.
Denny?
No.
Kim?
No.
Policy 901, community education. The purpose of this policy is to convey to employees and to the general public the important role of community education within the school district. Questions or comments, Kim?
No.
Denny?
None.
Carrie?
I would just say if we can talk about at the working session, like the frequency of how much the community uses the buildings in general, and not just necessarily the community center, I think would be really helpful to understand what potential there is for revenue to come into that.
Do you want numbers?
If you have any, do you have any specific questions, and we can give you more specific information? You can email them to us
Yeah,
in
I
advance.
can do that. But
We'll
I
try
think
to-
it's more of a general idea of how much do we use our facilities for community engagement.
Is a lot enough of an
Yeah.
answer?
No kidding.
I think
Oh.
our facilities are used a lot
Sandy
for
would be
gym
able to answer
rentals
that.
and different things like that. But if you give some, I'll try to give some numbers around.
Even
that.
just to know, like, in
know.
24, like, how often it was used, what kind of money
Yeah.
we had coming in about for it.
Get that for you.
Jean? Dan?
Nope.
That's it.
Thank you. Next, Janelle, do we have the representative from the Native American? Okay, we'll go on to item 11.2. The action item is... Well, actually, Dan could read it as clerk, you know.
You guys want me to start?
Go ahead. Yeah, no, why don't you read it? That's your job as a clerk.
All right.
You can finish chewing.
All right. The American Indian Parent Advisory Committee Resolution, February 2025. Whereas the school board or district has an AIPAC composed of parents, guardians of American Indian children who are eligible for Indian education programs, American Indian language and cultural teachers and paraprofessionals, American Indian teachers, American Indian counselors, American Indian adults enrolled in educational programming, and American Indian representatives from community. Whereas the school board or district affords the AIPAC the necessary information and opportunity to effectively express their views concerning all aspects of American Indian education and the educational needs of the American Indian children enrolled in the school and program, and whereas the AIPAC is directly involved with and advises the school board and district staff on Indian education program planning, and whereas the AIPAC develops and submits recommendations to the school board and district staff pertaining to the needs of American Indian students. Therefore, be it resolved that the AIPAC concurs that the school board and district are compliant with Minnesota statutes, section 124D.78, and that the school board and district are meeting the needs of American Indian students. We, the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee, issue a vote of concurrence. We attest that the school board and or district are compliant with Minnesota statutes and that the school board and or district are meeting the needs of American Indian students. AIPAC Chairperson, Jessica Betlick. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Karen, how do you vote?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Denny?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Dan? Yes. Motion carries.
Okay. So now we'll go to 11.2, approval of the emergency medical responder textbook. Did everybody have a chance to look at that information in your packet? Okay.
What was in there for that? Was there, like, actual link
There
to
was
the
a
textbook?
paragraph that talked about.
Oh, it was just the paragraph.
The book and who it's intended for and what
it.
the purpose of the book is. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve that process, let's see, the medical responder textbook.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Item passes 6-0. Next, approval of the process to fill the school board vacancy. And we have a process that we have now put into place. Has everybody had a chance to read it? Okay. I'd just like to read some of the highlights of it just for the general public. First of all, there are legal requirements that you have to be 21 years of age, you have to be a resident of the district for at least 30 days, you have to be an eligible voter, and you cannot have conducted a sexual offense. You have to be willing to attend the meetings twice a month. The application window will be February 26th through March 12th. You can get the materials from our office here at the Education Center. And then you have to fill out a letter of application, including your name, your address. You have to answer questions such as what do you think the role of the school board member is, identify and describe how you would address what you believe are the district's 2 or 3 most important issues, and why are you interested in serving on the school board, and to describe your previous professional and or volunteer activity in the local community, as well as involvement in the activities of programs sponsored by the New Prague area schools. You are to enclose an attachment of a current resume and submit the written materials to Janelle, again at our central office here. Okay, then we have the part that talks about our thing that we're going to be doing, and that is we will have a list of qualified candidates that will be published on March 14th. A maximum of 6 candidates will be interviewed on Monday, March the 24th at 4 p.m. at this location here again. At the conclusion of the interview, the board will make a selection. A special meeting will be held on Friday, March the 28th, to approve the resolution of the appointment, and the selected candidate will then be able to take office on Monday, April the 28th. Do I have a motion to approve this process?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any discussion items at this time?
Yeah, we talked about doing an open forum, and it doesn't look like that made it in there.
Yeah, I have just a couple more items.
But I didn't overlook it, did I?
No, we don't
Oh,
have it
it
on
wasn't
that
in there.
document because we're still trying to find someone to host it. I think we have found someone to host the candidate forum. So right now we're tentatively looking at Thursday, March 20th. The details are in process. And then I would add one more piece. You quoted 4 o'clock start. I think we would start the meeting based on the number of candidates that we
Good
had.
point.
And so it could be as early as 4, it would be later. We would adjust that to try to.
Based on the number of applicants.
Based on the number of applicants to make it adjacent to our March business meeting, if that's okay with you all.
Then it pointed to the 2024 meeting schedule, which I'm guessing should be 25.
I made a mistake.
No,
Yep,
I just
forgive me.
wanted to clarify that in
Yep.
case anyone was looking at it.
We always like to throw our newest members for a little bit of a loop and see if they'll show up at the wrong meeting or anything like. No, I'm being facetious. I'm sorry. That was my error.
No problem.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I'll ask for approval of it. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Item passes. Okay. And then we have a resolution to accept the donation from the Sheriff's Youth Project.
Whereas the New Prague Area School Board of Education has established a policy concerning the acceptance of gifts to the school district, and whereas the policy states that the school board may receive for the benefit of the school district bequests, donations, grants, or gifts for any proper purpose, and that the school board shall have the sole authority to determine whether any gift with a value of $1,000 or more, or any precondition, condition, or limitation on the use included in the proposed gift with a value of $1,000 or more furthers the interest of the benefits of the school district, and whether it should be accepted or rejected. And whereas the school board may accept a gift valued at $1,000 or more only by adoption of a resolution by 2/3 of its members, and whereas the LeSueur County Sheriff's Youth Project wishes to donate $1,000 to Falcon Ridge Elementary for their annual summer fishing challenge. Now therefore be it resolved, the New Prague Area School Board of Education shall accept the donation under no conditions. Is there a motion to?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion needed? All right, Karen.
Yes.
Kim.
Yes.
Dennis.
Yes.
Carrie.
Yes.
Jean.
Yes.
Dan, yes. The motion carries.
Okay, and the last item of the agenda is the approval of the New Prague Area Education Foundation grant. And do you have it in front of you? If not, I'll go ahead and read it. It's for $400, and the grant is intended for Eagle View. The contact person is James Kohnhag. It's a nature outreach program. I don't know what date it'll happen on, but the grant is for $400. And you know what? I don't know if we've had this approved before. I thought the grants were just by the committee approved, and that was it. But we can do it. But
Yeah.
we have him. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve this grant.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. It can approve this grant. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Oh, I didn't mean that. I did. It's yes. Okay, we have the final thing on the agenda is the approval to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Yes, item passes. Thank you, everybody.
You.
Oh, yeah.
Are there
Do we have
signatures?
to do that?